Hello and welcome to another edition of Lab Rats. My name is Andy Walker.
I'm Sean Carruthers.
And this is the show where we demystify technology, specifically lately a lot of mobile laptops and that sort of thing. And today, a new product from Apple that we've kind of been cautiously watching over the last little while. They've updated their operating system from Mac OS to a new OS 10. The new version is called Lion, right?
Yeah, OS 10.7.
Right.
And it is, like you said, called Lion, and it just launched as we do this about a week ago.
Right.
So we've got our hands on it and have tried it out, and which is kind of funny because we've been doing a lot of, as you say, mobile recently, and this is back to the Mac, so they say. So what are we doing, doinking around on a desktop / notebook style operating system?
That's a very good question. So there's an interesting little twist to Lion that you may not be completely obvious on the surface. So today we're going to give you some insight into what is Apple's strategy with Lion and how does it connect to the mobile world. And it's kind of hidden in behind the scenes, but today we're going to expose it and show you little hints that shows the direction that they're going with it. That's today on
Mac Rats.
Before we get started with OS 10 Lion, a quick message from one of our sponsors, hover.com, our brand new favorite place to buy domains and do more with them. Big news coming out of these guys. They have completely reinvented the control panel in the last few weeks. You can actually preview it, and in fact, they're going to actually make the new control panel a permanent tweak, or a permanent fixture shortly in August of 2011, which is fast approaching us. So we encourage you to go over and check that out because it's much easier to use. You can do all kinds of bulk renewals. You can change your address with guys that keep control of all the addresses for your domains and that sort of thing. Really a great new control panel.
Yeah, remember all of those domain registrars in the past where you used to go there and see what you had, and it was a gigantic grid with tons of data and tiny bits of stuff that you never really knew what it was or cared about. Yeah, this one is a lot cleaner, and you can see at a glance with nice, very obvious graphics what's going on with your domains. So,
Yeah,
love it.
It's great, isn't it? It's really amazing. Really easy to manage your domains, manage your email, and that sort of thing. So go check it out, hover.com. We're going to give you 10% off with this coupon here on the screen so that you can take advantage of that and try it out. And by the way, if you've used it before, you can actually use it again, believe it or not, because you know us. We love you. You can use that every time that you go and buy domains. So check it on out. That's LabRats is the code. All right, fantastic. Let's talk about Lion. This is an interesting kind of adventure that Apple's embarked on.
Yeah, they pre-announced this a while back and talked about some of the features, and finally out now. We've gotten our hands on it and put it onto our machines here.
Now we started sort of putting two and two together as we started going through the new features, right? You know, then there's all these new features, and they're starting to look a little bit like the iPad in some ways, and the iPhone, and iOS 5, which of course is about to be released for the iPhone and the iPad and those kinds of devices as well.
Yes, sir.
Interesting. So what are they doing?
Well, the one thing I think they're probably doing is getting us ready for a world where the two are merging, where the iOS is the operating system on your notebook-style device. So we're getting used to more and more touchpad or a touch interface with our fingers. Now I know that they've said that they're never going to do that on, say, like the iMac or the MacBook is just not ergonomic. But I think there might be something up in their design department brains there that's going to solve this problem, because it looks like a lot of what they're doing in terms of the desktop operating system now is sort of moving in that same direction. Touch interface based, very, very much visceral in that regard. But you know, a lot of the stuff that we're sort of used to from the operating systems of the past for your computers seem to be going away.
Well, I mean, so you're saying that the computer era is coming to an end and the mobile era is starting?
I think that's the case. So we've already noticed that for the most part, we don't talk about desktops much anymore.
No, we don't.
Even the average people out there who want a computer for their home are thinking, let's get a notebook because I can move around the house. So the desktop is going away. It's going to be dead within 10 years, more likely than not.
Yeah, I think, well, with the exception of maybe some companies, I think the desktop is done.
And I think definitely with the success of the iPad, we're even looking in an area where the bulky laptop is going to start morphing into more usable designs that are more mobile and more like tablets. So, I mean, get speech recognition onto one of these things, and you don't need that keyboard anymore.
No, that's true.
So,
that's very good.
we'll see in a few years this might be looking a little bit ancient as well.
It might. Okay, good. So let's go through the features then, because there's some really interesting new developments. And as you start to see these, you'll sort of go, oh yeah, I get it. Oh yeah, I get it. So I mean, so first of all, I guess they started with some minor interface tweaks, but put together, it starts to look very mobile-like.
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, the first tweak that's very interesting, that sort of has that whole feel of using your iPad or your iPod Touch or your iPhone, is when you download Lion here. The way you get it is by going to the Mac store or the Mac App Store on here and downloading it that way, just like you would an app on the iPad. You go to the App Store, download it, install it.
So the App Store is a library of desktop applications. So it's a software library, but for the Mac.
Pretty much, and the Lion is the first operating system upgrade to be delivered in that way. So you don't actually go out to the Apple Store and buy a copy of the operating system on a disk at this point. In August sometime, they're going to make it available on a USB thumb drive, and again, that's going to be a first for delivery of that at retail. But yeah, they are getting rid of that disk-based operating system. And if you look at some of the things that they're doing in terms of desktop hardware, like the Mac Mini, they're getting rid of the optical drive altogether. So you can bet on the next generation of MacBooks, they're probably going to be getting rid of the disks again.
Yeah, of course.
On that, just like they got rid of the floppy drive earlier. Good. So now it's all digital, it's all coming out of the cloud, that's how they're delivering. So that's one way that they're mimicking the experience on
the
here.
App Store on the iPad and iPhone, yeah. Okay, good.
Right. But yeah, there are some actual tweaks on this as well. So the first one that I think burns a lot of people when they get onto OS Lion, OS 10 Lion, is something called natural scrolling, which a lot of people are finding a little bit less than natural.
Me included, by the way.
You included. So I think a lot of people are turning this off. So the whole concept is when you use gestures or a scroll wheel or something like that on your operating system, you're used to it working in a very particular way. So you go this way, and your screen goes the other way.
So you do this, and your screen goes up that way.
Right. So it goes in the opposite direction of the way you are scrolling, typically speaking.
Right.
So you think about it, it's like a gear. You're operating a gear that's going against the screen and is pushing it in the other direction.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't really natural if you think about it. When you use the iPad, you actually go down,
pull down,
and the content goes
pulls
down,
yeah.
which is exactly the opposite of the way it does it on the desktop when you use this.
Yeah.
Now, Paul notes, of course, that when you're doing it on a notebook and using the trackpad on this, it's actually one step removed from the screen itself. I said that's not necessarily the killer on this, because we're just used to doing it in this way because of years and years and years of doing it that way. That's not to say that it's easy to readjust to this.
You have to retrain your brain. Like I'm doing this, and it's going the opposite way, which way I was supposed to go, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. Just because something makes logical sense when you think about it deep down doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. And
right.
I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be turning it off here, just because not everyone is just using one machine. So I'm using this machine right here, and I could train myself to use natural scrollings, that when I go down like this, the screen does the same thing, like my fingers are tracking it on an iPad. But that doesn't mean when I go over to my edit machine, which is not online yet, that I'm not going to have to readjust to it, or when I go over to Windows machine. So people are going to be going back and forth. It's going to be a huge brain panic every time you switch over, trying to remember which direction you're going.
I actually sucked it up, and I thought, okay, I'm going to stay with it. I'm going to retrain myself.
How's it going?
The first day was painful. The second day was almost as painful. And a week later, it's okay. I'm getting used to it now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm doing the things, and it's doing the thing that I think it's going to do, as opposed to the opposite, which is, of course, what happens right off the bat. So I think I'm going to get there.
Yeah. But anyways, that whole thing goes to this whole iOS is Mac OS now.
Mm-hmm.
They're tracking your movements and gestures the same way on one as they do on the other.
That would make
it just
sense.
feels unnatural.
Right,
So,
okay.
so we'll see if that holds steady. So the other thing about this is, you'll notice on my screen right here, I've got Safari up, and we've got a screen that goes down below here. You notice over to the side, it doesn't have a scroll bar.
Yeah, what happened to scroll bars?
They got rid of them.
Why?
Because you don't need them, I guess. But when you
There's no scroll bars on the iPad, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's no scroll bars on the iPad until you scroll on something like this. So
Oh,
when you scroll and you scroll down, you'll see a scroll bar appears on the side here. So, and then it disappears once you stop. So, and again, when you're doing something in your iPad or your iPod Touch that has a long list, often when you start scrolling, you'll see a little bar appear on the side that shows you where you are in this lengthy list. So, again, scroll down on this, it appears, then goes away. So, that's another way it looks the same.
Right.
And one other thing on this is not exactly pod related, but just a notable tweak to the interface here that a lot of people are really into. You got the windows on here, and when you used to have to change the size of your windows, like say a Finder window, you'd have to go down to the bottom right corner and then adjust it from there. And that was the only way you could adjust the size of your window. So you'd have to adjust and then drag your window over to the place where you wanted it to be. Well, now you can actually resize the window from any of the sides here. You can resize it from the left side, the right side, the top. You can adjust it from the corners. So you've got 9 points, I think they said, that you can actually adjust your window size. So you can get into shape fairly quickly. So that's really nice. I think a lot of people really love that.
And then, and of course, it looks like they're scrubbing the color out of the OS too. What's that about?
Yeah, I think this is the theme. Every time they release a new version, it comes with a slightly different theme, slightly different coloring. And this one, it looks a little bit less colorful than it did before. So Paul says it looks drained, and I don't disagree with that. Yeah, it's.
He likes it.
I don't like color.
Yeah, Paul is very colorless.
Yeah. He doesn't have a tan in the summer.
No, he just stays in the basement all year.
Very much opaque colored.
Yeah, slightly blue tinged, I think. Anyway, so this is a few shades of gray, but a little bit paler than it used to be in some places. So, yeah, again, I'm not necessarily sold on this, but whatever. And you notice one other thing on this is the edges are a little bit squarer than they used to be on some of the dialog boxes, a little bit less rounded and bubble shaped. So.
So let's talk about, I think, another experience that I think we've seen on the iPad and the iPhone, and that's this idea of autosave. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, so the whole thing with your iPad when you use it, say you're using GarageBand and you're creating a piece of music. Well, how often when you're doing that do you go and press the save button? You don't. You don't have to. It just automatically saves where you are, and if you create a change on what you're doing, it remembers that. You don't have to actually go and hit save.
And this is a sort of a trend on cloud-based applications too. I mean, Google Docs is the same way. There's no, you don't save your document. It just is saved.
Right, it is
a constant state of saved.
It's a constant state of save as you make changes. So now it is something that application manufacturers or writers will be able to turn on or off, I think. So if they want this to be part of their application, they can build that into the code. There is an ability to actually lock your document so that it isn't automatically saving everything you do and overwriting previous versions. So if this is the version you want and you just want to play around with it a little bit but not have it muck up your saved files, then you can set a lock. But you can also just let it just auto-save, and then it'll create versions, and it saves all of those inside the document itself rather than creating a zillion different files on all that. So that's one nice feature of that.
Good. Okay, good. And I think that's a utility that just totally makes sense. And I mean, thankfully, that's being moved over. Well, I think one day that save button is going to be a bit of a antique.
Yeah, I think it will be. And one sort of semi-related feature here is something called resume. So if you have a bunch of documents open and you close the app entirely, and you had, say, 4 documents open when you hit close, it'll remember all of those documents that were open, and when you fire it up again, there they all come again. So even when you start up your Macintosh, again, it'll fire up all the apps that you had open when you hit shut down. So it's sort of related, but a slightly different touch to that.
So talk to me about Launchpad. This is a new icon that shows up on the dock.
Right.
So this looks very familiar.
So if we go over here, it's a little rocket ship. I'm going to click on it. And yeah, this looks very familiar. What does this look like to you?
The iPad interface?
Looks like the iPad interface. And so you've got at the bottom the little dots showing you how many panes of apps you have, and you can scroll from side to side to get to the different ones you have here. So
could it be that may be the future of interfacing in the interface on your notebook?
It's quite possible that this is the way it's going to go. I mean, it's definitely, if this is a preview of that, it's interesting. I think power users are going to be a little bit upset about this, and I think they'll want a way to get under the hood of this. So the nice thing about this is when you have these on here, again, it's just like the App Store on your iPad or iPhone. You go into the App Store, buy something, it automatically installs everything you need to make it work, puts it in here. Then, if you want to get rid of it, you can go in here, say, and just grab it, hold, and then everything starts shaking. Again, something we're familiar with from these iOS devices. And then we can move it, we can delete it. For example, we can actually take this and turn it into a folder. So we can actually drag this in. Let's not drag Chess. Let's drag iMovie in with iPhoto. And now we've got a little folder here in here. And again, the interface looks pretty much exactly like it would on iOS. You can move them back out of here. You can rename the folders. And the one thing that's of note here is when you're doing this, it's not actually rearranging it in the back end. It's only creating shortcuts and folders on Launchpad. So it's not actually changing and putting them into folders behind the scenes. So nothing will break when you do that.
Good.
So
the software also has a new full screen mode. I guess that's the capabilities being built in. Just like, I suppose, on an iPad, when you run something full screen, you don't see any evidence of the operating system.
right, so we
Same
can.
with this, right?
Yeah, again, it's something that's built into the operating system, and application writers can add this or not. So the applications that come from Apple will have this built in. So if you go into the View menu, we can see Enter Full Screen here. And so you notice it'll actually, everything will slide off to the side in the background, and now this Safari is running full screen. It'll be the same with the other applications from Apple. It'll do exactly the same sort of thing. So now we don't have any of the other things getting in the way. So we have access to the dock over here, but we don't have any of the other things that would be sitting there. Again, we can get out of it just by pressing Escape and getting back into the regular mode that we have. So for people that get distracted very easily with a lot of wingdings on their screen or their alerts and whatnot, this is a good way to just put focus on one task at a time.
Okay, good.
And then, oh, and the other thing about full screen apps is when you're in full screen, you can actually swipe between your apps just by using your gestures. So go from one full screen app to the other. So you can actually use gestures to do that from the main screen as well and get into your dashboard, which is sort of hidden now. But when you're in the applications, you can swipe back and forth and go from one app to the other. So.
And this is also all true for the calendar, the address book, and mail as well, which has all been redesigned, right?
Yeah, so the calendar, first of all, we'll take a look at the email here. So the one thing, I'll actually hide this back so that is the way it was when we first got it set up. So you notice it has a 2-column panel, one with messages down the side and the pane for reading the message on the other side. Yeah. And this looks pretty much the same way it does on the iPad.
Yeah.
So a slightly redesigned look that makes you more familiar with it like you were there. You've got the same thing when you go into the address book. Your address book now looks kind of like it does on the iPad. And then you've got your calendar, and it looks kind of like it looked
on the iPad.
Yeah. So it's redesigned. It looks a little bit less business-like on here. It has the sort of Apple, the fun iPad kind of tweaks to it to make it look a little bit like an address book or whatnot. So, but yeah, all of this is sort of pointing to this is looking like the iPad in a lot of ways. You still have a lot under the hood that will allow you to interact with your Mac. I mean, you still have the terminal if you want to get in under the hood and use the Linux-style shell, I guess OpenBSD. So you can get in there and actually use that the way you used to. But you don't have to. You can go for this very candy-colored, easy-to-use interface for a lot of this stuff, just like you would on the iPad.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Sean. That's great. All right, well, let's take a break, and when we come back, we've got some other features in Lion that aren't necessarily related to sort of this whole mobile move, but are interesting nonetheless, and we'll talk briefly about that before we get on to Picture Time, and of course, Clip of the Week. Welcome back to Lab Rats. Well, before we get on to Clip of the Week and Picture Time, I just wanted to, I know you had a couple of features that Lion has introduced that are kind of interesting and worth noting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of them is called AirDrop. Now, anyone that's sort of been a Mac power user has known for a while that you could actually share files between Macs that are on the same network by finding another user in the sidebar in the shared devices and then looking for their public folder and then their Dropbox. You can just drag things over that way. But most people aren't going to do that, and they won't really know that they can do that. But AirDrop is a feature that actually allows people that don't really understand the concept of networking or don't want to go looking for that, the ability to share files really quickly. So over on the Finder bar right here, if your machine supports AirDrop, not all of them do, but if it's a new machine, it'll be right here in the favorites. You click on AirDrop, and it'll bring up a list of your little neighborhoods. So you see me at the bottom, and at the top, we see Paul. Paul appeared here because he's got AirDrop running. Mm-hmm. And now I can take a file and transfer that over to him. So I'll do the Google Plus logo here and just send it over him, drop it on his account. He'll ask if I want to send it. I'll hit send. And now over on his machine, he'll get a request to say, do you want to receive this?
Do I have to?
Yeah, please accept that. Okay, so then it sends. So when you see a little circle, it shows that the file is being sent. So it gives him control over what he wants to receive. But it also just means if we're two Mac users and we don't want to go through all the process of adding each other and finding that file, we can just both fire up AirDrop, bang, and then we're done. Very simple. Yeah. Oh, now he wants to send me something. I'm going to decline that because that looked a little bit silly.
No, it's awesome.
So anyways, that's AirDrops. That's one feature. And the downside of this, unlike public folders, which are sort of always in operation if you've got your folders shared, AirDrop, both of you have to be in AirDrop for you to appear. So if Paul turns off his AirDrop on that side, you'll notice right here he's going to disappear off of my screen in a few seconds here. Yeah, there we go. He's gone.
And he has to run Lion as well to do this.
He has to run Lion to do this. So you both have to be running Lion, and you both have to be in Finder in AirDrop. And then you'll see, if you've got everybody in that, then you'll have a whole pile of people in this little network neighborhood sort of area here. So,
and you have to be connected to a network of some sort.
You have to be connected to a network. So if you're all on the same Wi-Fi or all on the same hardwired network, you should be able to see each other in this automatically.
Good, very good.
All right, so one other thing is something called mission control. Now you might remember Expose on the previous versions of the Mac where you could go into a corner or something like that and then see everything that's on your Mac. Right now all you got to do is 3 fingers up and then you're in mission control mode and you see every single thing that's running on your Mac and it groups it all together by types of applications. So I've got 4 Microsoft Word documents. You can see them all grouped together here. I've got a couple of Finder windows here. I've got a couple of ScreenFlow documents open. It'll group them all together and you can see basically at a glance what all is running on your machine at a time, and then you can just click on it to go to it. So I can go to Safari again just by clicking on that. And there we go. And again, just 3 fingers up and we're in this mode for this. And the nice thing about this is if you have multiple monitors, you can actually see on the top that you do have multiple monitors, and you can actually scroll when you go from one to the other. So your other monitor will list all the things that are running over there too.
Neat.
So
very cool. Right. And then finally, any compatibility issues around sort of this whole Lion? Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah.
There's lots of new tweaks, right? So obviously there's going to be some issues with third-party software.
Yeah, I think that's always an important thing to stress. Like if you haven't upgraded yet and you're thinking about it after seeing all these features, don't do it yet. Find out if anything that you use that is actually absolutely mission critical to your business or to your home is actually supported, because there's a few things that just aren't going to run, like little plugins that you use in your browser potentially, full suites of software. The one thing that's been noted is that Rosetta support, which is the old version, the pre-Intel version of the code, is going away. So if you have something that only uses Rosetta to function, like say a very old version of Photoshop, you haven't been able to afford to upgrade. I mean, this is a no-brainer. It's like $30 to upgrade to this. That's very cheap and easy. But if you have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to upgrade all of your software on top of that, it's a little bit harder. And so some people don't do that. You might lose access to all of that if you just upgrade without thinking. So always check compatibility. And there are sites out there that will be able to tell you whether or not something is compatible. Do a Google search, but there are also some compendium sites out there that will show you.
Cool, very good. There you go. So worth $30, so just be careful.
Always be careful when a new operating system comes around. Always.
There you go. That's next generation Mac OS X or 10 Lion. So you make the choice whether you want to upgrade or not, but it looks like it's going to be the future, and whatever comes after Lion clearly is going to be going in a highly, another evolved version towards mobile at that point.
I think so.
Good. And maybe might not be called anything other than iOS 6.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
Who knows? Okay. All right, well, let's take a look at a clip of the week. This week we have something moving in the other direction. We're going to show you a how do I that Sean did about the iPad 2 and how to use iMovie on that device, an application that started on the desktop and has been migrated to mobile. So let's have a look at that.
Welcome on deck. I'm Matt Harris.
Hi, I'm Jay Goldman.
Welcome to the A-List.
Hi, welcome to Miss Download.
Now when you tap on one of the video clips in the timeline at the bottom, little handles will appear above the video clip. You can actually tap on one of these with your finger and shorten the clip to just the section you want. This means you don't actually have to use absolutely every bit of video that you shot. You can actually edit it. Now if you have a lot of video in the timeline at the bottom, you can actually change the scale of your timeline by using the pinch zoom functionality. Now if there's a clip in the timeline that you want to remove entirely, you can tap and hold it and then drag it up out, and you'll see a little puff of smoke as it disappears from your timeline.
There you go, a How Do I series about the iPad 2. In fact, there's several parts to that piece that you did, and if you want to see the whole series, zip on over to butterscotch.com at the URL here on the screen, easy to get to, and see all the parts. You did 5 parts, I believe, right?
It was 5 parts, yes.
There you go. So check that out, butterscotch.com/here on the screen. All right, good. So now is my favorite part of the show. That's the universal symbol for?
Picture time.
There it is, absolutely. So,
all right.
Yeah,
we got a couple pictures for you today. So first up, we have one from Greg, who's 13, and he sent us a photograph, well, actually a screen grab of his iPod Touch, and this is the wallpaper he has on there. And I'm going to guess that since that says Greg, and Greg sent it, that is Greg.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Hey, Greg, your hat's on sideways. You should straighten it out.
That's the style these days.
That's what my dad used to say. It's funny.
You become your dad?
I'm becoming my dad. I can't help it. We all do. It's just the way it goes.
There we go. So thank you, Greg, for sending
Thank
that
you,
in
Greg.
and risking Andy mocking you for it.
Yes, there you go.
All right.
All right.
Another one from our good friend Jack Rumpel, who's
Jack
touring the world in his Prius that has been hacked to get 3 trillion miles per gallon.
Yeah.
And he drove all of the way
To the-
Mitchell Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota. And he's
On $9 a gas.
$9, maybe even less. But yeah, you see he's wearing a Butterscotch t-shirt there.
Good man.
Which is good. And he mentioned that we should definitely get down there if we ever decide to go to Mount Rushmore.
Ah.
And I actually did go down to Mount Rushmore at one point. I think you may have remembered me telling this story about going down to Mount Rushmore because I got storm stayed in South Dakota on my way back from Vancouver when I moved. So
Right.
I got caught in the middle of a freak storm at the end of May. And I ended up visiting Mount Rushmore because
Did you
of
go
that,
to the
'cause
Corn
everything else-
Palace?
I didn't go to the Corn Palace. I don't know if it was open at that point.
Clearly, next time you get stuck in a storm on the way from Vancouver, you should stop into the Corn Palace.
I will be sure to do that.
Okay. All
So,
right.
thank
We're
you,
gonna
Jack.
Go see Jack Rumpel. Jack's an awesome guy. He's a big fan of the show, contributor.
Yeah, I'll let him know that I'll be there. So I think he's in Denver typically, if I recall correctly, somewhere in Colorado. But
You should buy him a
we'll
cocktail.
meet. I'll buy him a cocktail. I'll buy him a corn cocktail.
Corn cocktail. There we go. All right. Well, if you want to send your pictures in and have your Corn Palace featured on Labrats, you can email us at
Corn liquor with corn syrup at labrats.tv.
No.
Paul found that disgusting. I've seen some of the stuff you eat, Paul. You found that disgusting?
Yes.
That's a great email address. That'll definitely get to us. Yeah, or more simply, of course, you could use.
Feedback at labrats.tv.
Yeah, very good. Well, that doesn't upset Paul at all, does it?
Nope.
No. See.
Love that feedback.
Okay, good. All right, well, thank you so much for pushing play this week and coming to see us. It'd be foolish for us to be here messing around with line if you weren't out there sitting there with your pussycats watching us. My name's Andy Walker.
I'm Sean Carruthers.
We'll see you next time.
Are you ready? Try this at home.
Just can't get enough.